Kintsugi Heroes acknowledges funding and was made possible with support from the Community Broadcasting Foundation. Find out more at cbf.org.au. Welcome back to Kintsugi Heroes, helping people tell the stories they need to share so you can find the stories that you need to hear. In this episode, John had a chat with the amazing Jetha Devapura. Jetha's journey has been one of real grit and heart. He's faced down obsessive-compulsive disorder, which he likens to a ritualistic addiction, and discovered a path of courage, compassion, and commitment. Starting over at 56, Jetha was inspired by his parents' bravery and set out to help others through incredible projects like the CCC House in Sri Lanka and the Let's Talk program in Australia. We'll hear how he turned his struggles into a mission to boost mental health and build self-worth. Enjoy this one with Jetha Devapura.
So, listeners, Kintsugi Heroes fans, welcome back to another podcast episode, Kintsugi Heroes Stories That Matter. And it's another amazing privilege today to talk to a man who has already given me a dose of energy this morning. He's an energetic being, Jetha Devapura. Jetha, thank you so much for joining me on Kintsugi Heroes Stories That Matter today. You have an incredible list of accomplishments. You have a wonderful background in both, taking risks and moving from one country, Sri Lanka, to Australia, setting yourself up in business, and of course, then giving back. But rather than me go on, I'd love to find out about how you see yourself. What's on your business card, and what are you proudest of?
On the business card, probably the least thing on my mind at the moment in terms of on my business card, but on my vision for the future for myself is a journey where I can share my love, I can share my learning and learn from people like yourself and the people that surround me, really to let go, to try and reduce the noise.
Wow.
And that's, I think, where I feel like the most meaning is going to happen in my life, and how I can contribute into that equation.
I love that, mate. So your business card contains your vision. It's like your vision and your mission, right? It's almost like you're living that vision and mission. Often that's something in the background we talk about when people, when we want to impress someone. But that's actually how you define yourself.
Yeah, I think so. But I think before you sort of embark on that, I call it the infinite game, because so often we are sort of forced into this finite game of, what do I need to do today? What do I need to do next week and next month? And what do I need to achieve? My targets, my KPIs, what's my expectations? And they're fine and they're needed to live and to earn. But I think we shouldn't also forget the infinite, the journey that we are on and how much we can contribute and learn from that. So I think you need to do that in parallel. But the starting point is important. For me, the starting point is the purpose. Why? I guess the story I'm gonna say really starts from purpose. And a lot of people say, let's just, why don't you figure out your purpose?
Yeah.
It's not something you try to figure out. It's something that you learn in the journey of life, I guess. And I was talking to you earlier before, and I always think one's purpose, for me anyway, stems from the intersection of pain and power.
Yeah.
The intersection of pain and power. So much to learn from pain and so much to reflect and understand your own power.
I love that idea, the intersection of pain and power. Where did your pain come from?
And the pain's still there, John. And the pain will continue.
Pain is life,
Pain is life, suffering is life. But we don't dwell on that. We look at life from a positive angle, from a different perspective as well. But to understand that pain is normal, is natural, is really important, and not pretend that we need to get rid of pain all the time. the pain that started on my journey, at the time it was painful, but now I look back and go, thank you so much. Thank you so much, pain. Was my journey, I guess, battling OCD, a mental illness, anxiety disorder, which I was diagnosed, I would say 25 years ago, but I think it's a bit longer. And at that time, growing up, when mental health wasn't the most popular subject like it is today, we just kept it quiet. We kept it, swept under the carpet, so to speak. And I was ashamed. I was anxious, and I suffered in silence. So, and now here I am, 25, 30 years later, talking about it like it's normal. Like here it is. Here's my, you can call it vulnerability, but I always try to think about it as being authentic. Being authentic to yourself.
Absolutely. So of course, you came from Sri Lanka to Australia. Do you think your when you were young, your OCD was around, and but it was difficult to identify, or did it come on and you suddenly realized that there was something different about you?
You can only reflect back, isn't it? Like, when you're going through that journey, and until something happens to you, you just don't know. And maybe you're right. Maybe I think I had very perfection tendencies. I had to get it right. So the tendencies are there. The DNA was set. The gun was loaded, but the environment caused the trigger. So that environment. I mean, I said gun was loaded. My personality was probably more towards that being perfect, achieving perfection, which I will talk about later, which doesn't exist. So the gun was loaded. I think the trigger was when I was pursuing my corporate career up the ladder, so to speak, and I was isolated. I was working as an expat. So I've got an engineering background, and I was working as an expat overseas, and the isolation was, the environment that really broke me down, missing my family, my friends. And one day, just like, you just got a Hemi, running, sprinting to that goal, and you go, oh, I've got that Hemi, and just falling down. That sort of hit me like that. And all of a sudden, things were a little darker, a little bit more anxious, and it stuck around. It didn't go away. Nothing wrong with being anxious, but when things stick around, there's something miss.
Well, that's right. We define sort of mental challenges through the amount of impact they have on our lives, right? So, and of course, you mentioned engineering. You had chosen engineering as a path from childhood, right? So, as I think in the past, I've seen you say you had as a Sri Lankan fellow, you had three choices: doctor, lawyer, or engineer.
I jokingly say, you either had to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or a loser. I think accountant is in that equation.
Oh, right. Yeah. That makes sense.
Just to make sure the accountants feel,
someone's got to take care of all that.
Yeah, somebody's got to do the books. Keep us all,
So how much did your early days, because you then moved and shifted around as a profession around Asia and the world. How much did your Sri Lankan culture influence you in your early childhood?
Look, I remember I tell a story because I work in schools now. My career I've restarted my career. At a young age of 56. I think early on, I remember coming from Sri Lanka. I went straight to year 7 in a high school, and two, Aussie kids came up to me and said, "Hey, where'd you park your elephant?" and you look back and you laugh at that, and I remember feeling like, and actually, the thing that came out of my mouth without even a slight inch of a doubt was, "Same place you parked your kangaroo," right? With a broad Sri Lankan accent, with a head nod. I remember a teacher said, "Oh, you say yes and no at the same way," kind of, head nod, and I can reflect back and laugh at it. But I always look at that moment And I think, what if I wasn't that, justice orientated, strong minded kid? What if I was this little timid Sri Lankan boy that felt really ashamed and really sad about their identity? Going home and say, well, I come from this land with elephants. That's pretty horrible, and sort of parking my identity to a side and trying to recreate that. Luckily for me, that didn't happen. It just egged me on to be stronger and more vocal.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably a really good beginning of one point, I guess, where that ability to, or the need to voice my thoughts and opinions has come far from that point on. Yeah.
It's interesting, that those experiences all add up and define, how we later deal with life. How, was it your family? Was it your culture? Was it, those challenging experiences of moving into a different environment and telling? Or was that something that was either was it that a catalyst for later challenges?
I come from two best parents in the whole world, my mom and dad. My dad passed away 8 years ago. He was 94. My mom passed away 2 years ago. She was 94. They lived an amazing life. My dad was Sinhalese background, so from Sri Lanka. My mom was a mix of Sinhalese, Irish, English. I think there's a little bit of Indian.
Mm.
So we have a beautiful, diverse gene pool. So I always look back and say, thank you so much to all my ancestors, going back to wherever they came from.
Yeah.
Right. For giving me this opportunity to do what I do. So first of all, I'm grateful for the past. And the present was my parents were very courageous and very compassionate. I always say mom was very courageous. She single-handedly came to Australia I think it was about 3 months before we came in 1978.
Wow.
As she's a nurse, she got a job at the Royal Melbourne Hospital. She then organized our schools. She organized a place for us to live, even organized a job for dad. And then we just sort of came in on the plane, and we had a place to live. We had schools to go to and a job for dad. And they were just a really simple, down-to-earth family. We hardly went to restaurants, we hardly went on holidays. We didn't spend much money. We paid off our little flat very quickly.
Yeah.
Mom and dad did. Yeah, there was no extravagance in our life. It was all simplicity. We didn't know any better. And I think that background, I wish I can give that simplicity to my kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a solid background that mom and dad gave us.
So when you had that experience of sort of one day realizing that, things were a little different, you mentioned it was a little, you had an experience of feeling it descend a little bit on you, right?
Mm.
How did things change for you?
Actually, I haven't told this story in a podcast anyway before, or maybe I have. I can't remember, but I remember mom telling our four kids. I'm the youngest of. I've got a brother and two sisters, and I think I was in Australia. I was a teenager, and mom told this story how they had gone to a astrologist. Somebody reads birth papers and so forth, and they had said to mum and dad that, yeah, you've got four kids, so and so, but one of them is going to do something great. And being my own personality, I go, that must be me. That must be me. I mean, who else would it be, right?
Yeah.
And I remember that story mom is telling, and me thinking that, and I reckon that's just stayed for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
That just feeling of self-worth, because after that story, I went to high school and I failed 2 years in high school in a row. I failed 11 and repeated it. I failed I failed year 10, repeated it. I failed year 11, repeated it. And I remember being called to the office, year 11, and speaking to I remember who it was, but might have been the assistant principal.
Yeah.
And they asked me the question, "Hey, Jetha, pretty much gone down 2 years here. What do you want to do?"
Yeah.
I said very naively, very naive. I want to be a doctor, and they almost came back very quickly, said, "Look, kids who become doctors, A-grade students all the way through. So what do you want to do?" And I said, "Oh, well, engineer," because I didn't know much about law. My brother's just got into uni engineering. And so they had to put me to the A class. So we had A, B, and gifted kids classes. Gifted kids are those, grade sixes who did year 10 work,
Yeah.
year 11 work. I was in the B class. All the kids who mucked around, I loved it. That was it's just my people. The A class was, the good sort of studying people, and they just put me to the A class just for one maths. Just I think it was either applied or pure maths in those days, right? And I remember studying for the exam because I couldn't muck around. Everyone put their head down and studied. And during the exam, I went to school the day I got the report. The next day I was walking to school and everyone was going, "Oh, you did really well." And I said, "Oh yeah, whatever." Walked into class, teacher gave me the report. I've topped the class in maths. Here's a kid who's just gone down 2 years and just gone to the next high level for one subject and topped the class in maths. And it's sort of, reflecting back, it really shows how important environment is.
Yeah.
And went on to finish year 11 and 12 and get into engineering and pass with distinctions. But those early years was a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. I loved it, but I also got into trouble when did all sorts of things.
I love that environment as a you become where you hang out almost.
Yeah.
A great thought. So of course you're an engineer and you're sort of conquering the world of engineering. What was important at that time for you?
Get to the top.
Mm.
That's it. It was all about, where I can work. And, I started an MBA, I completed an MBA. It was all about, that corporate ladder. And I guess it's when I went to Sri Lanka, a friend introduced me to the cancer hospital there that everything changed.
So you were just going back to your, the place you
just a holiday.
Yeah. Wow.
Just a holiday. And they said, "Oh, Jetha, why don't you come and, they were part of the Lions Club in Colombo, and have lockdown in Colombo. And they said, we go to the cancer hospital, the local cancer hospital in Colombo, give out food items and so forth to the outpatients." And I just walked in there and I was just saw this mum and daughter on the floor, the corridors of the hospital. And I said, "What are they doing down there?" And they said, "Oh, they're floor patients." I said, "What do you mean floor patients?" "Oh, they come in, they become outpatients, but they have nowhere to go until their next chemo or radiation.
Right. Wow.
And they sleep on the floor." And I said, "What?" I could never picture that happening at the Royal Children's, in Melbourne.
No, it's not.
And so I just couldn't walk away, John. I think that was the turning point for my charity work. That's probably the turning point from me putting, half my energy and eventually full energy towards making a difference to people as opposed to making a difference to the budget.
So it's a fascinating. I'm always interested in what changes at that moment. Whether it turns something on or it feeds something that had been there but hasn't been overcome by family, career, self-interest. Well, it's not selfish to deal with your own issues, but of course sometimes that takes up, when we focus a lot of energy on it, it takes up all our resource. So did that switch on for you, or was it something you fed?
100%. I think when I said I want to be a doctor,
Yeah.
as a teenager in that school office, I didn't mean, and I know, especially Sri Lankan, Indian, Southeast Asian families want their kids to be doctors, lawyers, and engineers,
Yeah.
right? And not because anything, they just want a better life for them,
Yeah.
and status is really important. And for me, being a doctor, when I said I want to be a doctor, it wasn't anything about status. It was about making a difference.
Right.
And that's what ignited when I saw those kids
I love that.
making a difference. So I think that was what I meant. And also, my dad has to be one of the most compassionate, compassionate person in the whole world. As much as my mom is very courageous woman, my dad is an amazingly compassionate man who did a lot of, helped a lot of people in charity work in Sri Lanka. And even here, when he came in. And so I think, once again, the seeds were there. It's a matter of meeting the right environment.
Yeah. So, with taking an engineer's view of helping people, you're looking like it's a huge hospital and a huge problem, right?
Yeah.
So, why did you suddenly walk in and believe you could make a difference?
Total naivety, mate. Total naivety, and I love that, because I've it really taught me something about entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
That real naivety an entrepreneur needs to have. I know there's self-belief and there's skills and competence and all that stuff that people need to have, but they also need to be, naive to go, yes, I can make that. I couldn't walk away. I came back to Australia from seeing those kids and mums, even dads on the floor. But mainly it was mums. And I said, I just want to do a fundraiser. I just want to raise some money. And there was no thought about starting a charity. It was just, let's get, actually the first fundraiser was to buy medication. So the kids won't vomit, because when you go through chemo, the medication makes
anti-nausea.
vomit, anti-nauseous. So it was just to make $2,000 or $3,000 to buy some anti-nausea medication so the kids can eat and survive. That first fundraiser raised about $10,000. The next one, $40,000, and 5 years later, probably a bit longer than 5 years, we raised $1.6 million here and in Sri Lanka. And today we run the largest cancer transit home over there with 194 beds.
Wow. So naivety turned into miracles, mate. How
Yeah. And I always say, like, I really don't give myself the credit. I think there was this infinite mindset for me, was we just need to build that.
Yeah.
There's no timeline, there's no pressure. We just need to build that. I'm just going to do everything I can to build that, because it's only a building. I mean, buildings go up every day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We just need to build that. And nobody's really done that for 50 years in that hospital.
Yeah.
People just end up sleeping on the floor.
Yeah.
And we know that when you're immune compromised with chemo and radiation, that even the common cold can be fatal. So I just wanted to stop that, give these kids an opportunity to live and enjoy life and fight cancer. Started a team in Sri Lanka as well. So we didn't just raise the money here in Australia alone. We had a team in Sri Lanka, got my family together, and friends. And I remember, taking a tuk-tuk, because somebody said, oh, you should go and meet this person. He's got a big business. I remember, with my suitcase, with my laptop, in a tuk-tuk, going to this big company and, knocking on the door to this founders, like a owner, CEO. And he goes, I'll help you.
Wow.
I'll help you. And then all of a sudden we had the dream team of people who are really passionate about helping the country, really well-to-do, who also, help to raise these funds.
It's an amazing story, and I'd love to explore a little bit more about what it really means,
Oh,
what's happening. But just let me take it back to you for a moment, right? Because like very confident, very capable, but of course some challenges have popped up. You mentioned 25, maybe longer years ago when you started to have OCD challenges, right?
mm,
What did that mean for you as you went through life, right? How did you adapt to the realization that you had that
mm.
diversity of situation? And you mentioned about gifts out of this these challenges.
When I was diagnosed with OCD, I didn't know what the hell mental health was. Like, I mean, what is that word? Mental health. So it was just about hiding everything from everyone because it was embarrassing. Because at this time, John, I was really, try to climb the corporate ladder. I worked hard. I'm a hard worker. I put in a lot of effort and time, and I just didn't want anything stopping that. But it did stop me in terms of slowed me down. I remember walking into a news agency near work one day for something, and I saw a fridge magnet. I saw a fridge magnet, and it said courage. A courage, and I thought that's what I need. I need courage because one of the things with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is that I had to check something 15 times before my brain said, "Oh, it's done, Jetha."
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and being a perfectionist doesn't help. So I remember I always explain OCD as like being a drug addict. The intensity of the anxiety and the pain is so great that it takes you by the scruff of the neck and drags you for your next hit. And
mm,
the next hit is the next check. And you do that and you create
mm,
some kind of ritual to say 15 times
mm.
or 10 times or 20 times.
Yeah,
You don't know. You don't know that you just got to sit with anxiety. You just don't know. You just keep doing it. So courage to stop doing it was a great virtue for me. There was three that really helped me. The next was compassion. So compassion is something that I studied in Sri Lanka and here I continue to study. Like my parents and I come from a Buddhist background,
Mm.
and compassion was one of those words that resonated with me. Not that other religions don't teach compassion,
yeah,
but that word compassion really was strong for me. And I thought to myself, I just need to be compassionate to myself
yeah.
first and foremost. And so I was really trying to be kind to myself and not be so harsh on myself. And the third thing that sort of came to me is commitment. And funny enough, I was looking for that third word because if it's C and C, courage and compassion, my OCD brain was saying, I need to find
Yeah,
another
no,
C,
no, see.
right?
Yeah,
And I said, commitment. That's my strength. That's
yeah,
my superpower, right? Commitment, perseverance and determination. That's what I've been given by the people behind me, right? So the three C's were my virtues, and I always tend to say the three C's were the three tablets,
yeah,
that really got me through. And when it came to name the foundation, I called it Courage, Compassion, Commitment Foundation. That's why it's called the 3CCC Foundation.
yeah.
And that's, I think, when I really found my purpose. And that's why I say it's the intersection of my pain and my power.
So your power, I love that idea of your mental health medication is your understanding of the three C's. Right?
Mm,
So and just before we move on, that just explain how you execute courage, compassion, and commitment. I suspect commitment is something we bring from, as you mentioned, from our ancestors, or who we are, a little bit of something
mm,
about who we are. So how do you when you're faced with that bully pulling you by the scruff of the neck,
mm.
how do you apply your courage and your compassion to make a difference?
I always say that courage is not the absence of fear, but courage is in the presence of fear. Courage is to be seen. Courage is to be seen and to see. I felt I was seen, and I think I thank my mom and dad for that beautiful self-worth bucket they gave me to carry on through life. And I think a lot of people these days who are going through difficulties need to be mindful, be present, being aware, and see themselves and have the courage to do it. And it does take courage to see your own concerns, not just the concerns of others. Definitely compassion to be heard, compassion to sit and hear your own thoughts and what are you saying to yourself. What's that autopilot rumination that's constantly playing in the background, and to have that compassion and be kind to yourself and to kind to others. And then I think commitment, to me, the three is to be valued, because to be valued is it's a real intent. To value a person is an intent. I value that person, especially to be valued when that person doesn't necessarily come from your own community or come from your own family or a total stranger. What is the thing that I value about them when they're so different? And so commitment to because they kind of all go in circles, because when you have that commitment, then courage becomes easier. And when you have that courage, compassion becomes much easier. And it's this constant cycle to be seen, heard, and valued.
Wonderful. So once you understand that you could execute the 3 C's into your life, what changed?
I jokingly say that I turfed my Prozac to purpose. Although I took it only for, I think, 2 or 3 months, 3 months. I think what changed was just having that inner self-worth, having that value. We inherently come to this planet with a bucket of self-worth, and the environment tends to either fill it or take it away from us. But how do we not ensure the environment is the deciding factor? How do we make sure that we are the deciding factor of our self-worth bucket? And that's where courage, compassion, and really commitment helps.
How do you see the world? How do you see others who are going through these struggles? Everybody has something that challenges them. That's the nature of life. How does this influence the way you see others?
Once again, I like to probably say it from a self-worth bucket, from a self-worth angle. I tend to look at, because I teach this in corporates and schools about value, and I try to break down value into three segments: self-esteem, self-worth, and selflessness. Okay. Self-esteem, self-worth, and selflessness. Self-esteem, such a popular word. Everyone kind of knows what self-esteem is. It was the magical word in many moons ago. Psychologists used it like a common word. But there's a little flaw in self-esteem. Nothing wrong with it, but there's a little flaw in self-esteem. And if you think about it, it always relies on the validation of other people. Because one day it could be high, one could be low. So it's a sawtooth wave, this self-esteem thing. So don't get hooked up on self-esteem. Selflessness has a wonderful name, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, all those people. But at what cost? There's always that selflessness that I do everything for others and not worry about myself. And yes, so nothing wrong with selflessness, but at what cost is the question mark. That's again a sawtooth wave on our well-being. But that self-worth bucket is that gray area. Now, where does that come from? Is it your background, your culture, your parents, your school you went to? And I think that is the key thing that is missing. As much as we say we have a mental health pandemic or crisis, I think we more have a self-worth crisis. Not because we are bad people, it's because there's so much noise in the environment. There's so much distractions in the environment. And for me, the focus is about building self-worth so that we don't rely so much on our environment. Although as human beings, as people, we're a social being and we need to be connected, and we do rely on people. However, in bad days, we need to look inwards and rely on ourselves.
I love that. framework to think of the balance between, what's for me and what's for others. That's a great, taking that forward, of course, you were there and you ran a fundraiser and it escalated and you had millions of dollars, making a difference in Sri Lanka. What was that about? Right. Like what was that about you? Was it about the world? Was it about others? Was it just something from compassion? Or was it, you mentioned purpose driving you through this.
Yeah.
What is the purpose, right? And where does it go?
Yeah. I think for me, like the focus was, it felt good.
Yeah.
Okay. It just felt good. It just felt like this is what I'm meant to do.
Mm.
And I always say to people, I was on autopilot, like this path to help. And don't get me wrong, John, there was many challenges, many challenges. I'll tell you about a challenge about the Lifeline Center a bit later. But I just, I think it's that having that infinite mindset that we just need to stop these kids from sleeping on the floor. That's it. That's what we need to do. And there was so many challenges. We couldn't get a place to build this transit home. We looked for many years, and finally we convinced the hospital and the Department of Health in Sri Lanka to give us a land, and they did fantastic, and we're thankful. I think it's just this dogged need to help someone. But what came out of that was I was really helping myself, and all of a sudden I've started feeling better because my self-worth bucket was filling indirectly, you could call it. Indirectly, my bucket. I look back and go, "Oh my God, my bucket's full now." Or at least it's enough that if a tsunami comes tomorrow, it's not going to hit rock bottom. The wave's going to be deep enough, but my bucket is even deeper. And I think I always look at the self-worth as a depth of the ocean, your ocean. If there's a big wave, will it hit rock bottom? And you need to prepare your bucket for those days. So as much as I was helping others, it really helped me.
And of course, you mentioned Lifeline, right? So you didn't stop at building a transit house, a house to support people in moving. Like I think it's like the Ronald McDonald of Sri Lanka, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Ronald McDonald House. But you then, you saw other challenges, and said, "Oh, well, let's keep going."
Yeah. So my thought was, look, me and my family are fortunate to be here in this wonderful, beautiful country called Australia. And what I like to do is copy and paste, not reinvent the wheel, but copy and paste some best practice from Australia to Sri Lanka. So the transit home, we call it CCC House, Courage, Compassion, Commitment House.
Beautiful.
Which is a copy and paste of Ronald McDonald.
Yeah.
Actually visited Ronald McDonald House to understand how they operate, and pretty much made the biggest Ronald McDonald House in the world, 194 beds, right?
Wow.
So my passion was mental health because of my story, obviously. And I found out that Sri Lanka had one of the highest suicide rates in the world, in the top 10. This is 15 years ago. And I thought to myself, I just need to call Lifeline and get Lifeline to help me to start a Lifeline Center. And that's exactly what I did. So I called Lifeline a couple of times, got through. I said, look, I need someone to help me to start a Lifeline in Sri Lanka. Can somebody help me? And they said, we'll put you in touch with our international president. Or she just happens to be in Melbourne from Tasmania. So I met up with Mary. Mary Power Systems was the president at the time. She's secretary on the board of Lifeline International, where I'm the vice president on the board there currently. I took her out for dinner, had a bottle of wine. 6 months later, we had 2 trainers from Lifeline Hobart fly to Sri Lanka to help me start a Lifeline Center, which we scrambled together with phone lines and people. And it was December 2009. Today, almost 15 years later, it is the #1 crisis support line in the whole country. And we are making a huge impact on suicide. I think it was, and don't quote me those exact numbers, but I think it was about 15 lives or more, between 15 and 18 lives when we first started a day that died by suicide. And today it's about 9. it's similar to Australia. 9 deaths a day, roughly about 7 are men.
And of course, keeping an organization like that going and keeping it relevant and funded is a huge challenge.
It is, because all what I just said to you has taken, it wasn't 2 years or 5 years. This is the journey of 20 years. We started the foundation in 2003. Now it's a DGR charity here in Australia. And we just celebrated our 20 years last year. This is our 21st year. So it didn't happen overnight. It was a long journey. And throughout that journey, I worked full time. This wasn't my full-time job. This was just a hobby, so to speak.
Wow. Yeah.
That became more than a hobby, I guess.
Yeah.
But finally, in 2 years ago, I decided, had the long chat with the wife, and I said, I'm going to quit my work. I'm going to spend a couple of years trying to do something I really love here. My next 20 years is going to be a project in Australia. And she said, go for it. And, did some solar investment and dedicate my startup to start up this wonderful program called the Let's Talk program here in Australia.
An incredible example of courage, role modeling, great modeling in courage, moving into another phase of life, right?
Yeah.
And taking the risk at this stage.
Honestly, it's the most uncertain time in my whole life.
Yeah.
At 56, and especially coming from that very conservative background, mom and dad, extremely conservative. I'm probably the least conservative in our family. And, having that really solid job and going away to nothing at 56 was the most uncertain time of my life. Relied on my wife, to sort of support me and support the kids. I just reflect back and I asked my sister, when was dad? How old was mom and dad when they first came to Australia? My dad was 56.
Wow.
Mom was 49.
Yeah.
And, they did a huge step for the kids, a huge. I mean, my dad was a senior assistant secretary at the Ministry of Agriculture in Sri Lanka. He had a really good job. Mom was a nurse. They both were settled, So they came from certainty to uncertainty, and it was my turn.
And let's talk. I understand. I often mention to people that we need conversations as a baseline of well-being in the community, and we need 2 million of them a week, right? And we're a bit short of that number happening. Caring conversations, intentional conversations. So how does let's talk work?
Well, first of all, as much as the outcome is better mental health and suicide prevention down the track, the Let's Talk doesn't really focus on mental health.
Yeah.
It talks about the importance of being seen, heard, and valued, and the importance of building self-worth. We can't control the environment, but we can control what happens to us. We can control, our self-worth bucket, the depth of our own ocean. When the tsunami hits, that we are still going to be okay. We're going to ride through, that. So the Let's Talk really started actually through Lifeline in Sri Lanka. So I get a report from Lifeline in Sri Lanka every month, and there's 21 reason codes why people call us. And when we did the numbers, there was a beautiful bell curve of the most reasons why people call us. And the mean reason why people call us, the average highest reason was relationship issues, loneliness, economic problems. And then came your heavy duty mental health issues and abuse and suicide ideation. And I thought to myself, why are people calling a crisis support line for relationship issues? We need to sort something out, in the ground before they even call us, because we couldn't even keep up with the calls, by the way, in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
So I developed the Let's Talk program because had nothing to do with mental health, just let's talk, let's have a conversation. And the vision of letting everyone talk safely is building psychological safety. And I thought, well, why? And it took me a while. It didn't come to me straight there at the time when we developed the program. But a few years later, it came to me that, the reason why we're letting everyone talk safely is because everyone wants to be seen, heard, and valued.
Yeah.
If everyone's seen, heard, and valued, then it will build the self-worth bucket. Although sometimes we don't want to be seen because of the fear of the consequences.
Well, it's not safe sometimes.
It's not safe to be seen. And that's where we need to change that. Because inherently, fundamentally, the human wants to be seen and noticed. So that's where it's going. And we do run a program in schools. We're pretty new to the game. We run a program in workplaces, in the corporate area as well. And the whole concept is to build a village, is to train enough mentors and buddies. Buddies meaning kids, peer support, mentors as in adults, to create that village where people feel safe to talk about their stuff, any stuff. You know what I mean? So we talk about vulnerability, and I always think, and I trying to figure out the difference between vulnerability and authenticity. And I've been vulnerable today with you and shared my issues in mental health, but I don't feel vulnerable. I just feel this is me. This is me being my authentic self. Don't get me wrong, I didn't feel like that 25 years ago.
Yeah.
But here, so to me, let's talk is about being your authentic self so that we can be seen, we can be heard, and we can be valued.
I love that. You just said, I didn't speak authentically or, vulnerably previously. And my view is that's a muscle. We need to, to learn how to practice that consistently in all of our areas of life. So how do you create the opportunity for young Australians and workplaces to practice that?
Look, it just comes from wisdom of leadership. Leaders are promoted. Usually leaders are promoted because they're really doing good at their job. But, I think we need to change that to say leaders should be promoted for being good at their job, but also being good with people.
Yeah.
And being good with people is being authentic and vulnerable.
Yeah.
Simple as that. If you can't be yourself, then you're not good with people, because people want that from leaders. They want that authenticity and vulnerability from leaders. They crave that. So it starts with leadership being open, honest, and authentic. The ability to create that psychological safety, the ability to say, hey, I can come to work, put my hand up and say, hey, I've got a great idea, without feeling, they're going to judge me or they're going to humiliate me and they think it's stupid. Or they can come to work and say, hey, guys, I stuffed up. I made a mistake, without the fear of being, humiliated, judged, and punished. If we can come to work, if we can come to school, or if we can go home with our hands up, and what I'm doing here, John, is I'm surrendering, right? I've got my hands up, Now there's difference. The person in front of me could be holding a gun where I'm forced to put my hand up, or the person who've been very, very authentic and very compassionate to me to hear my story will embrace my story. And I would just, I will be my authentic self with you. And I think that's what's missing. The ability to be authentic and vulnerable, not be afraid of the consequences. And so psychological safety is alone is not enough. We need to build psychological resilience as well. So what I mean by that is, yes, we are making schools and workplaces safe, but we can go overboard and put every cotton wool in everywhere, so we don't hurt ourselves. But that two people are different. What's safe for me might not be safe for you under the same environment. But what we need to do is also build psychological resilience. The ability to not just bounce back, but I'll call it bounce with and bounce off.
Yeah.
Bounce with, the ability to bounce with someone else, that understanding that we are not alone, but also bounce off, meaning, let it go to the keeper, because I just can't handle everything that is coming towards me.
I love that idea, and I think I'm hearing it goes back to your understanding of self-worth, right? If you believe that you will survive, then you will adventure, and the knocks may bump you around a bit, but they you will survive.
Yes.
Yeah. And what do you want like I love the vision, and almost like inviting people to step into their next level. Right. What do you want to have happen? You talked about you're setting up the next 20 years, you've moved into a new career, now you're building a new program, and Let's Talk and Beyond is going to roll out. What do you see happening?
Well, firstly, I just want to thank my wife and hope she allows me to keep doing this. I've got a 20-year journey I can look back on, and that in that 20-year journey is the story I told you about the CCC house, and then the Lifeline Center we call CCC Line, Courage, Compassion, Commitment Line, copy and paste of Ronald McDonald House and Lifeline. That took 20 years, and we are still maintaining that. And I look back and go, what happened in those 20 years? Okay. And in that 20 years, I didn't push pressure on myself. I mean, I put pressure on other people to make it happen, but I didn't put pressure because the vision was so clear. It was just crystal clear.
Yeah.
So, and there was no pressure because I was working, I was earning, and I was okay. Now, the next 20 years is probably a little bit uncertain. However, the last 2 years, the uncertainty has just getting smaller, little by getting better and better for me. It's just a mindset thing. I think it's just the fact of knowing that this is what we need. That the white elephant in the room is building our self-worth.
Yeah.
And nobody's really saying that, but there's a lot of focus on mental health, on the elements of mental health, but understanding self. Even the word self-worth is not a famous word, right? I think that's where we need to focus, build resilience, build psychological safety, build relationships. They always say there's 3 types of relationships we can build: relationships with ourselves, with relationship with others, and relationships spiritually, whatever that is for the individual. And I think today, when we look at society, all 3 are suffering. We don't have the time to build relationships with ourselves.
Yeah.
We don't have the time to build relationships. I mean, I'm not talking about social media. I'm talking about real, connection. We don't have time to build that, and we don't have enough time to build spiritual connections as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's and if you look at relationships, it's connection. And connection is a fundamental need for human survival, apart from, the air to breathe, water to drink, food to eat, and shelter, right? Connection right in the middle there.
So that's a journey to clarity for you and for your mission. What would you like to tell people who are listening about what they do now, right? Well, you're like something that goes out and says, hey, this is what I know works for me. Maybe you should consider practicing or trying this.
I think one of the simpler and probably the hardest things to do is write your own book. I got asked the other day, somebody said to me about, what's a good book? The best book is the book you write, and it'll be say, My Life, author John Milham, right? And just to reflect on your life, just to stay still and in silence, and to look back, acknowledge the people behind you, acknowledge your presence, and acknowledge all the progress you have made, acknowledge what you like to have, which is the expectations, and some expectations really are also harming us, our expectations. But when we actually look at what we've already progressed and where we come from, I think we have a more realistic expectation, because the word expectation, if you write it down, John, expectation, the first two letters are X, and X is a has-been. So expectations is just a has-been and an illusion of your mind of what you think you want. We need to manage our expectations by understanding who we are right now and where we come from.
And that is a great way, because where we're going is, I'm going to say thank you so much, Jetha, for the wisdom, and the vulnerability to share your story. And I'm feeling very inspired and want to get out there and try some triple C, mate.
Yes, definitely. Triple C. That's definitely, look, it's my personal virtues of triple C's. And every time I think about it, I think more and more, how it's really helped me and how it's going to help me going forward.
Beautiful. I'll add it to my fourth C, my personal code, the triple C. And
I love it.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much, mate. It's been an absolute joy to talk. I really appreciate your time, and thank you on behalf of the world for what you have done and continue to do. Jetha Devapura, thank you very much, man.
Thanks, John, and thank you for the work you do as well.
You're a champion. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Kintsugi Heroes. Thank you to Colin Lilly for permission to use Broken as our theme music for this series. If you enjoyed this conversation, share the podcast with a friend and let us know by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support Kintsugi Heroes and the stories we share, head to kintsugiheroes.com.au and follow the instructions to make a tax-deductible donation. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.